Welcome to Accenti's Workshops to Build Community, Engaging Canadian Seniors, a project made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. My name is Licha Canton, founding editor-in-chief of Accenti magazine, and this is our 8th workshop in Accenti's 3rd series of workshops. Welcome to This Is It, Writing Multi-Generational Family Stories with Matthew Fox. Our workshop leader, Matthew, is a literary critic and fiction writer. His works include the short story collection Cities of Weather and the novel This Is It, which has just been released. Congratulations, Matthew, on your new
Thank
book,
you.
and welcome. And the microphone is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Lucia. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I like that we've got a good sized group here. I see we even have like a group within the group, which is great. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining today. I thought I would get started just by going over quickly some agenda points where I'm going to do a get acquainted session where I'll introduce myself, and if you're comfortable, you can also do the same. And then I'll go through some of the rules of the workshop, how we'll proceed, what's the etiquette, and how people will share. And then we'll get into our exercises. So there will be 3 exercises, each reflecting a different writing from a different generation's point of view. And then we'll close with a discussion that a large part of the discussion will involve some of the things that you have written over the course of the exercises. Um, so getting acquainted. Where have I been? Where am I going? So who am I? I'm Matthew, as Lucia said. I'm the writer of 2 books of fiction. One is called This Is It, that just came out, and the other is called Cities of Weather, which is a collection of short stories. I used to be an editor at Maisonneuve magazine, Toronto Life magazine, and En Route magazine. You probably know En Route if you've ever flown Air Canada. And I was a contributor to both of the volumes of Here and Now, the anthology of queer Italian Canadian writing. Most recently, my fiction stories, short stories, have been published in the New Quarterly, the Windsor Review, Big Fiction, and Grain. So that's my professional CV. Here's a little bit about my personal life, especially considering that we're writing about intergenerational stories and writing from different generations' point of view. I wanted to mention sort of some personal details and show you some pictures of my family. I was born in Windsor, Ontario, in 1977, and since then I've lived in Toronto and Montreal, London, New York, and Berlin. So Berlin is where I've been living for the past 8.5 years. I have a huge family on both sides, but my immediate family is a sister and a brother. But I have 30 cousins and 24 aunts and uncles. So there's quite a few of us, and there's nothing like a really big family to inspire some good fiction. My heritage is my mother's Italian, and then my dad is Quebecois, German, and Irish. So you can see sort of these pictures on the right here. Then in the top left is my Nona and Papa with my mother as a little girl, and then you can see a picture of me with my Nona as well. We used to go dig potatoes together in the garden. And then at the bottom there is a picture of me as a much younger man with my brother and my sister and my mom. And that picture was taken in Guelph, Ontario. So why am I leading this workshop? Um, I just put out a novel called This Is It. It came out on October 15th, and it really tackles multi-generational storytelling. And it's not a traditional novel. It's a series of 9 short stories that are all linked because they all have the same characters, and you get to see them, all these different generations of the same family in different parts of their life. I adapted a lot of the stories from my own family. Families tend to tell the same stories over and over and over again. And they change over the years. And I've always been really entranced with those stories ever since I was a kid. So it was such a rich set of stories that I tried to find what linked them all together and tried to find a compelling way of using all those stories and then connecting them in a way that would turn it into a novel. So if you pick up the book, you can see like there's a bunch of discrete stories, but there's one storyline that connects everything. And the one big thing that I'm trying to do in the book is explore the dynamics between the generations. So, what's the same from one generation to another? What's different, obviously, but also like how do different generations perceive right and wrong, and how different generations communicate, whether it's about vernacular or language or technology. So this whole workshop is really inspired by some of the exercises that I did to write this book. And I found it challenging in writing the book to be able to see from other generations' perspectives. And I did some research, I did some interviews, I talked to a lot of family members, and I tried to really dig in to what it was like to experience some of these old family stories when they were happening, as opposed to the stories that had evolved over the years that we told one another. So that is the inspiration for this workshop. And now I thought we could quickly go around and just introduce ourselves. So, give your name, your pronouns if you're comfortable, your location, and one or two sentences about what you hope to get out of today. And maybe we can start with Adele.
Hi, I'm Adele Newton, born Adelina DeLeo.
Okay.
I'm based 2 hours north of Toronto in the teeny town of Port Severn, Ontario, where we're having a blizzard right now. And in my retirement, I am working on stories of Italian women from the South, their stories and their recipes. I'm hoping it'll turn into a book.
Oh, sounds great.
My family's from Basilicata.
Okay. We're Abruzzes. Uh, Maria, do you want to go next? Oh, your mic is off.
So I'm Maria Giovannitti, maiden name Micucci. I'm also Abruzzese, and I'm a she, and I'm from Ottawa. I'm living in Ottawa, and I want to write a really good family, intergenerational family story to
Okay,
leave
great.
to my ch grandchildren and beyond, so that they don't forget their Italian roots.
All right. Well, you're in the right place.
Hmm.
Anna, would you like to go next? Yes.
Is it
I'll go
me at
first
the
and then
oh
Anna.
Oh, there are two Annas, of course.
hi
Anna and
Anna.
I are always it's
Yeah.
okay. Um uh so I'm Anna Romano. I'm in Ottawa. My pronouns are she, her. I'm almost Abruzzese, I'm Molisana. So happy to be here. I'd like to get out of this session sort of that challenge of different memories or like that revisionist history thing. Like I remember it
Mhm.
one way and my sister remembers it a completely different way. So if there's any strategies for that, I would love that. Thank
Okay.
you.
And why don't we go to
And
the other Anna? Yeah.
I'm the other Anna. Hi everybody. Yes, I'm a she, her. And right now I'm in Calabria, but I live in Montreal and we have a little house here in Calabria and I'm
Oh,
spending a
lovely.
couple of weeks here. But what am I going to get out of this session? Well, I think that the title really is of interest to me also, the same way as Maria and Anna and Adele, because I'm in retirement as well, and I started writing, and I'm ending up writing stories about family.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
somehow that combination of family and intergenerational stories really appeals to me too. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right.
Thank you.
Marissa, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Marissa Jalfusa. My mother is Abruzzese. She was born in Roseto, degli Abruzzi, and I'm a poet and a researcher, and I work in the field of education. And a lot of my work, even in the field of education, has to do with generational experiences with education, but also as a poet, a lot of stuff around my family and the different generations comes into that too. Just looking to be able to do that with more clarity and, just enrich my ability to do that. Thanks,
Okay.
thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Julie, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Julie Matlin, she, her. I'm in Montreal. I also have regards for you, sorry, from Valerie House. Told me
Oh my God.
yeah.
Well, send her my very best,
I
please.
will. So I'm a creative nonfiction writer. I've written a lot about my happy marriage and how everything is great. And now I find myself in an odd situation. My husband overdosed this
So
year,
sorry.
and it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I hadn't seen or noticed. And this is a story that I've decided that I want to tell in fiction rather than creative nonfiction. So, like in looking back, I see how I ended up here, and I want to kind of do a generational kind of cycle breaking story that I just think for everyone involved would be best if I did fiction. So this title really kind of caught my eye as well.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your husband.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Deb, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Deb LaRose. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm in Vancouver, so good
Oh,
morning
wow.
from the West
Morning.
Coast. And uh, I grew up in Trail, which is a very Italian community in British Columbia. My both sides of my family are from Calabria, so I grew up with a lot of stories from my nonas. Very fortunate to have those, and for many decades I've been doing lots of genealogy work and finding facts and things. So I want to somehow figure out how to put these facts and stories together.
Okay.
And so that's just been, I've got a ton of research, but I want to be able to tell it more in stories.
All right. Thank you. Cerise, you're gonna have to turn your mic on. Sorry, we can't hear you. There you
Got
go.
it, I think. Okay, so Cerise Morris, she. I hadn't realized that Italian roots were, part of this or some part of it. And it's
Doesn't have to be.
no, it doesn't have to be clearly, but the interesting, ironic thing is until recently, I thought I had some Italian roots and just learned that I don't, which could be part of what I would write about. I
Okay.
am very interested in creative nonfiction. I'm not a published writer, but I've done a lot of workshops. I like to write and somehow intend to. And I guess I'm in Montreal, by the way.
Okay.
I guess to simplify things, one of my questions in terms of memoirs or that kind of writing is how much can be said in terms of the living? Okay. So I guess that's something I would like to get out of this.
All
So
right.
there we go.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Janet, I see you've got a whole crowd there. You're still off. There you
Hello,
go.
yes. I'm Janet, and we are here in North Bay. I'm a she, her,
Hi.
and married to an Italian, although you can
Oh,
probably
nice.
tell from my voice that after nearly 60 years in Canada, I'm from England. My very large Italian family here has become interested in creating a family tree. And as we create the family tree, there are so many stories that come out that people want to tell. So we need somewhere for these stories to be told and stored and saved. Now, we have two other people here.
Hi, I'm Loretta Di Eugenio Abruzzese. I do a lot of theater work, and I'm interested in incorporating intergenerational work into what I do. That's it. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have
Hi,
you.
I'm Sylvia Antonazzi. I am from Montreal originally, but I now live in North Bay, and I am a she, her, and I'm just hoping to get more information. I am a self-published writer, so anyway, so I want to find out a little bit more. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining. Parastu.
Hello, so I am Parastu, she, her, Montreal. I am writing a short story that involves two generations, kind of like Alice Munro shift of time style. And yeah, I thought this is very relevant to what I'm working on right now. So yeah, that's why I joined.
All right. Well, welcome to both you and your cat.
Yeah, thank you.
Natalia. Your mic is off.
Hi, Natalia. I'm in Montreal. I'm originally from Russia. I have Russian and Ukrainian mixed family, and I found myself writing a memoir this past year, so I wanted to learn more. And I have a similar question to what Cerise brought up about how much can be revealed without hurting anybody. So happy to be here.
All right. Thanks. Katerina. Oh. You're going to have to turn your mic on. There you go.
There we go. Hello, I'm Caterina Moruso. I'm she, her, and I'm living in Calabria, Soverato, in the southern part of Italy. I was actually born in Canada, and then I moved here to Italy. So at this moment, I wanted to follow this this workshop principally to enrich my knowledge and deepen my knowledge on this subject for future writing. I'm really curious on finding out in the confrontation and in this workshop how Italian families were perceived in the past and how they're perceived now in the present, the newer generations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalia, I think Kate, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Henderson, she, her. I live in Montreal, and I've just finished a book of 15 stories that are together a novel. And so I've gone through some of the questions that people have here today. My work is fiction because I've decided that it's my take on the whole family thing.
Okay.
And I really enjoy writing about family stories because it's almost like visiting people that are no longer here.
Oh, that's very sweet. All right, thank you. I identify with that quite a bit. Okay, so just some quick guidelines about how we're gonna proceed for the workshop. So first of all, have an open mind. This is a totally safe space, and please be open to other people's ideas. Be creative. Try something new. Leave your comfort zone. Just a reminder that nothing works the first time the first time you do it. It took me 8 years from beginning to end getting my book out, so I can assure you that I screwed up along the way. Use your voice. Raise your hand on Zoom or turn on your mic and say something, or you can wave, and you can post to the chat as well. If you don't want to speak or we're in the middle of something, you can always post to the chat. And of course, take care of yourself. Feel free to get up, take a break, get a drink, Just please turn off your camera when you do so that we know you're not there. And then when you're not speaking, please keep your mic off. And, make writing possible. Be ready to write however you feel most comfortable. So have a pen, you can do it on a computer, however you feel most comfortable. We do have a big group, so when it comes time to share and stuff, we probably won't all be able to share within the time frame that we have, but we'll try to make sure everyone can share at least once. All right, so I have 3 sections and I've named them all after old songs. This one's talking about my generation. So this is about whatever generation you're in. And, for me, I'm 47, so I'm sort of a Gen Xer. And my parents are boomers, and my nieces and nephews are all sort of from Alpha generation or Gen Z. And so that's sort of how I slot in. And what I want us to sort of think about is the connection between memories, facts, and fiction. And it's important to note that I wanted to do this workshop because I wanted to talk about fiction writing. So this is very much about not being constrained by the truth or of the honest facts of what has happened. And so you can see I've have this note here about facts and fiction and facts. So fiction can get at truth. It doesn't have to be reporting, it doesn't have to be journalism, and it doesn't have to be accurate, or even the way a memoir or creative nonfiction has to be accurate. But fiction does get at truth. And sometimes it's the fastest way to get to truth, as opposed to facts. But the thing is that fiction creates its own facts. So for those of you who are talking about fictionalizing stories, it's always a good idea to let your mind go anywhere and not be afraid of making things up, as long as you're still getting at the truth, which can be quite difficult, of what you're trying to say. And then this, of course, all relates to memory. So memory is a kind of fiction. We all, think we remember things accurately. But it's important to remember when it comes to your memories that it's not necessarily reliable. It's biased, but it also gets at truth. Why you remember things the way that you remember them. What your memories are telling you, why you remember certain aspects and not other aspects. Those are all reflections of the truth that you're looking for or what you're trying to tell yourself. Sometimes it might not be entirely honest, but that you remember things a certain way tell you something about yourself. And that's true about everybody else as well. So when we get to the other generations, it's similar. They're remembering things the way they remember them for those reasons. So a reminder that we are writing fiction. So think about the process of remembering and retelling. Not just the way that you do it, but the way other people do it as well. I heard a lot of stuff in the intros about how somebody else in the family, a sister or whatever, tells a story differently or remembers something differently. And so it's always interesting to think about why. So why does someone make certain adjustments to their memories when they recount them? This can be, what does that tell you about them? And this can be a very powerful part of writing fiction, is when you're writing a character, no matter if they're based on somebody or not, or they're entirely fictional, the choices that they make, it tells you something about that character. So when you're building a character, you can do a lot with just showing how they remember things, how they recount something, what it is that they remember, what it is that they include, what it is that they omit. Memories are twisted, and so they are always changed sometimes to create a better story. Sometimes it's to suit somebody's agenda or their agenda when they're making an argument. They could be to obscure unsavory elements, people who use euphemism or omit facts about somebody in order to gloss over something unsavory. It could be to make the story more relevant to the audience. And it might be biased towards the present. So not really taking into account what was considered right and wrong at the time that the story happened, or not really understanding the limitations of communication at the time that the story happened. We tend to look at things biased through our own moment that we're conscious and the moment that we're telling the story. And that can come into play when you're trying to place yourself in another time or in another person's mind. We'll get to that, but it's particularly true when writing about younger generations. It's hard to imagine not having the experiences that we have and not using those experiences to inform what we're saying. So we're going to move into the first exercise, and it's always a good idea to use memory. Everyone always says, write what you know. And that's usually good advice because it's something that you can approach with a lot of complexity. You know all the different elements of it. And so for this exercise, what I'd like you to think about your generation and think about your family and think about a year of change for your family. Could be anything. It doesn't have to be a massive change, but something that you feel was a pivotal moment or a hinge moment for your family. So if you think about a moment in that year that captures the change, something that really reveals a meaningful insight about the relationship between someone in your generation, or you specifically, with the rest of the family, with the other generations. So if you think about that year and you think about that change, you can then think about a moment that really captures the whole thing. You don't have to write about the whole change and write about the whole year. Think about a single moment. And you can fictionalize that moment. It doesn't have to be a real moment that actually happened. But the idea is to capture briefly the whole thing in one expression, one short expression. So fictionalize the moment that you're thinking of. You don't have to write what actually happened, but rather describe the moment to get at why it was meaningful. So it's using facts. So the way that facts can come into this is to remember like the details and the sensations that capture the significance, and also the ones that don't, that might be quite vivid, but don't really represent the change that you're trying to describe. So you can use elements of fact to just capture the time and the scene and the tangibility. What were those things? So, for example, when I was writing this, I was thinking about the moment that I moved to university. That year was a huge year for me. All I ever wanted to do, I love my family, but all I wanted when I was 19 years old was to get away and to start my own life. And I thought about the moment that my parents dropped me off at that apartment on Colonial in Montreal, and saying goodbye to them, and how that must have been such a different moment for them compared to what I was experiencing, right? And I think about hugging them goodbye and the smell of my mother's perfume and the smell of my father's shaving cream, and how those hugs were different than other hugs. And so I could write about that moment and capture that entire intergenerational moment. For them, their kid was leaving the nest, and for me, I was finally getting this freedom that I had wanted. Just checking. Okay. So yeah, let's take 10 minutes and write the exercise. So we'll share after this, but I'll keep the slide up for the next few minutes, and you can take it from there. So I'm going to time it, and I'll let you know when we have a couple of minutes left. So enjoy. We have about 2 minutes left. Okay, let's wind down. All right. Before we get into sharing, I got a note in the chat from Adele saying that they couldn't see my screen. Can everybody else see my screen?
I can see
Yeah.
it now. I don't know what was wrong before.
Ah, good. Okay. I hope it wasn't the snow. All right. Okay. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. Let's do about 15 minutes of sharing. Like I said, I don't think everyone can share every time, so we're going to try to split it up a little. Who would like to share what they wrote? Sure. Let's see. I can't see everyone's name. Julie, do you want to go?
Sure. I already see a problem with my fiction writing in terms of what I actually knew and what I know now. But anyway,
Okay.
moving day, 1978. I was only 6 years old, but even then I knew my life was about to go through a drastic change. The movers traipsed in and out of the house, carrying my short lifetime of memories out in boxes. We weren't moving far, barely a 5-minute drive, but the neighborhood would be different. We were downsizing from a house to a duplex, from an upper middle class area to a decidedly lower middle class area. I watched all those opportunities and advantages my elder siblings had enjoyed exit my life, like those boxes from my house. My father had sold his business, a large importing-exporting company that had put him in the midst of the city's elite. Along with the business went his golf club membership, our country house in Laurentians, our second car, our twice-yearly vacations. He had decided, at the age of 40, to start over. He wanted to be a magician, and I mean this literally. Over the past year, he'd opened a magic shop with the showroom in our basement. This didn't jibe with the neighborhood's ethos, and he wasn't in a position to open a retail shop in a more desirous location. The proceeds from the house sale would fund his ability to expand, as the proceeds from my mother's engagement ring had allowed him to order his first stock of merchandise. So out we went. He was excited. My mother seemed ambivalent, but eager to support him. My sister, at 17, decided to strike out on her own, lying to my parents about having been accepted at the University of Toronto and hitting the road with her best friend with barely $100 in her pocket. My brothers, resigned, stood on the sidewalk, watching the lifestyle they'd had enough time to consider a right instead of a privilege disappear into the back of a large moving truck. This will be great, my father said. A new beginning. All I saw was an ending.
Wow, that's very, very good stuff. Thank you for sharing it with us. I really enjoyed the way you kept coming back to the details of the move. Like you'd go off and talk about it and then come back with the details. It really helps bring it to life and really helps ground it in your generation's point of view, right? The standing on the curb, the feel of the boxes or like the vision of the boxes going in the truck and all of these details. So like those are the key things that really can ground something. You can go off on the tangent, right? And talk about the significance, but it's really the things that about the tangibility of the moment that drive it home and make it feel like there's something real there for your character. Who's next? Anyone? Sure, Cerise.
I'm walking on the main street of our small town toward my mother, who I see ahead of me. I just learned that the hotel we lived in had burned down. My 10-year-old brother had stayed there by himself that night with oversight from neighbors. I caught up with my mother, and my only thought was, if he's dead, would she have a complete breakdown? And then what will happen to me and to us? We soon learned that he was one of the fatalities in the fire. I felt like I have to be in charge now. I don't remember anything my mother said.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite touching.
Yeah. A long time ago, but very real. Yeah.
Still, I'm sure it is very real.
Yeah.
And yeah, it leaves a lot, it opens up a lot of doors. Like there's a lot of narrative ways that you can go there. And it's very interesting to think of, somebody's thought being like, how their mother's going to react, and also that they're going to be in charge now, as opposed to about the fatality itself, the loss itself. It says something about the narrator.
Yes.
Yes. And I like the dynamic you have with the other generation. It really draws a stark contrast, certainly with the relationship with the person passed away.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing. We have a few more minutes here before we move on to exercise 2. I'd love to hear from someone else. Anna Romano.
Give it a shot.
Sure.
It's pretty short.
That's okay.
As my daughter wriggled her way off my lap and ran toward the altar to get a better view of her nonna, I was already transfixed by the white-haired couple sharing a kiss after saying, "I do." Dad must be rolling around in his grave, I thought to myself.
Oh, wow. I like that you've got, yeah, it's short, but you packed in all 3 generations there, several generations there. It certainly makes me wonder about the fate of the white-haired couple. Yeah,
You'll
so
have to read the rest.
Yeah, I guess I will. All right, thank you for sharing it. Anybody else? Yeah, Deb.
Sure, it's also very short.
Right.
I should have been there when Mom said they were gathering in the family room at the hospital. When I picked up the phone, the one still connected by a cord to the wall, and heard her unnatural tone, the tone that without fail makes me freeze with eyes wide open. Nono had been sick for a few days. Don't worry, she went on, everything is okay. I knew that family room was code for end of life, but my mother never believed that. For me, I listened more to everything is okay because there were so many steps to getting there for an okay moment. Flights to book, jobs to pause, home to lock up. So I did nothing but wait for the next call.
Very good. Thanks for sharing. The connectivity of it does feel like a slightly different generation when you talk about the phone and the cord, right? It's I remember that very well. But to talk about like the technology and like the way people communicated there and like waiting for the next call, it was not going to be like the way it is now. So it feels very of a time and placing yourself there. So thank you for sharing that. And I saw someone else had their hand up. Katarina? Yeah.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The moment the plane landed, my nightmare became real. For my parents, it was a dream. For me, it was a new becoming, full of despair and anger. I didn't know what to expect of this new life and beginning. I would be switching to a new language, a new environment, new landscapes, and a new way of living. As we picked up our luggages and advanced towards the arrival gate, I continued looking at my parents and the people in the other waiting column, ready to step up on the flight for Toronto, Canada. My only desire was to be in the opposite row, heading back to where I came from. I again looked at my parents, but this time I was enraged and wanted to scream and shout at the top of my lungs.
Oh, you really captured a moment there. It really does feel like quite a hinge moment in this character's trajectory. Yeah, there's obviously so much to come, the unknown. You really feel the character's terror. Um, well, thank you everyone for sharing. We're going to move into the next section now. I see that we have about 40 minutes left or so. So the introductions to the exercises are a little shorter. And yeah, let's get right to section 2, Papa was a Rolling Stone. So thinking about older generations, the one above you. And I think that what I learned more than anything trying to write about the generations before mine was that I needed a lot of empathy and context. So first, in the first exercise, we saw how like facts can really bring memory to life, right? And show you the significance of something. And the how it felt, how it smelled, how it you know the touch and the feel, the sensation of a moment, and how it can speak to the meaningfulness. So memory and facts, we know what those things are for ourselves in our generation. Mostly, it's automatic. But how can you find that for the generation before yours? So it's really about empathy and context. So this is the second exercise. What human experiences are universal? Right? No matter what generation you're in, there are certain human experiences that are universal. So maturing, coming of age, childhood, evolving perception, communication, learning to express one's thoughts, joy, grief, hope, and desire. And I'm sure there are loads of others as well. But those are the ones that I really concentrated on when I was writing my book. And then I also thought about what in terms of context, what shapes perception of human experiences for different generations. So what things are different generation to generation. So if empathy is a way of thinking about understanding that everybody has the same experiences and trying to think about what someone else has experienced, how someone else has experienced something that you too have experienced, it's the context that's always going to be different. So for the older generations, the culture is going to be very different. The music, the movies, the vibes, the slang, the habits, all of those things will be different. The technology, so the capacity for and the speed of sharing ideas. How do you get a message across? And of course, values change. What is right is wrong. What is considered just? Those things evolve over time. And then, of course, politics. What are the political dynamics of a moment? Like, so if somebody is living in, I have a story that I had to write in Italy in 1936, and it was a tough one because I had to sort of understand how the people then would have thought about where they live and who has power over them and what limitations they have. And then, of course, success. What does success mean? What was considered success and failure for an older generation? So in the example that I sort of hinted at, I thought about my grandfather and how he left Abruzzo and what propelled him to leave. And so I can understand his desire to go, why. I can understand all of those things about empathy, that it was very hard on him, that he had a lot of hope. Those things I really identify with. But the context was different. So that way that he would have considered those differences. And that brings us to the second exercise. So think of a moment when you realize someone from an older generation was fallible. So this often happens when you're younger, but it even happens to me now when I think of people in the older generation. And the way that you think of the way that you had perceived them up to that point, you realize wasn't accurate, and you understood that their humanity was like your humanity, that humans shared these things. So then think about that moment, the moment that you first noticed that. Fictionalize that moment. So Write it in the first person. This is a great exercise for getting into the mind of somebody from a different generation, in this case, the older generation. So think about that moment when you saw that the person was fallible. How were they experiencing that moment? So consider all the things that must have been true for them, context, and of course, write it in the first person perspective, and that's your empathy part. So just some quick tips. Write in a tangible way. Use a lot of sensual textures of the time, like, what would have been different than what we were experiencing in our generation. Find details that show why it was meaningful to that person, and then make up as much as you want. You have to go into somebody else's mind. You're writing from the first person, so you have to make it up. You don't have a choice, just as long as you capture the meaning. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to give, let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, we can do probably 8 to 9 minutes, and then we'll share again. So go for it. Okay, about 2 more minutes. All right, let's start winding down. Okay. Who would like to share their first person perspective from an older generation? We'd love to hear from you. All right. We've got Janet's room here.
As I neared the door to see if anyone else is arriving to our Christmas feast, the glass window in the door was covered with snow. I scraped the plane with my fingers to have a clear view of the dark night, the dark street, hoping for family to arrive. Little did I know this was to be my very last Christmas on Earth.
Oh, wow. Devastating.
Devastated. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that you can really feel it. You can feel the I don't know, I'm Canadian, so I know that feeling of the ice on your
Actually,
fingernail.
it was false snow. My hand had stenciled
Oh.
kinds of decoration, Christmas decoration, but it was topsy-turvy. It was all over the place. And he didn't know. He thought it was actual snow.
Oh.
And he scraped the window to see if somebody was coming. And I've got that in my mind. That's, maybe 60 years ago.
That's very evocative. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
I see Kate volunteered.
These grandchildren, they don't have any idea what it takes to build a life. They're so consumed with being happy. What's being happy when it takes all your time to make sure that everyone is fed and off to school? I remember when I was young and my friends seemed like the only important thing, but I grew up. I understood that to have a functioning family, you have to have someone in charge. You can't have two people in charge. It doesn't work. I gave him the power so that we could accomplish more together. These kids, they look at my swollen legs, the wheels of my chair, my gnarled knuckles. They have no idea of all the things I've accomplished in my lifetime.
I like I like that you went there. That feeling of, that undertone of resentment, but also It feels like this person really understands that they achieved something, including the grandchildren that they're observing. Okay. I really felt the character there.
Thanks.
Does anyone else want to share before we move on? Sure, Maria.
Okay, let's give this a try.
Okay.
In 1985, when I was 23 years old, my parents did not want to give their permission for me to go to university in another city. My grandparents strongly objected and expected my parents to agree with them. I could not believe my parents were still so old-fashioned. I was angry that they felt I could not be trusted to continue to be the good girl I had always been. I had been accepted to a program that would give me a great career. I know that they struggled with their decision. My mother understood my need the most. Now that I think about it, I understand how they were pulled between two worlds. I still feel that way too sometimes with issues related to my children.
Okay. Okay, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. It I think that we can all sort of relate a little bit on that one. Yeah, that feeling of being second guessed, not knowing for sure how other people feel about your capabilities. You really captured that in between of seeing yourself through somebody else's eyes. Okay, so I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I want to make sure we do get to our third exercise, which I've called "The Change is Going to Come." So this is going to be about the younger generations, and so in exercise 2, we saw how empathy and context can really enrich our perception of older generations and how they might have perceived things differently, as well as the things that were the same. So we can understand older generations. It's a little bit easier to do that for older generations than it is for younger generations because we ourselves are now older and our perceptions have changed. And it's very difficult to go back to a time when you didn't have experience and you didn't have the perception. And so rowing back to a younger moment and to think about what was important to you in your as when you were younger is a key part of trying to look at the younger generations that are with us now and trying to write from their perspective. So writing younger generations, it just taps a different part of the mind. You have to remember what it was like to see things the way we did when we were younger, even though experience has taught us that the things we once felt and believed were maybe not framed correctly or not totally informed. Undoing that experience is the challenge. So I've broken this exercise down into two things, just like the other exercises. So stakes and perception. So for a younger generation, the stakes are simply going to be different than they are for an older generation. Certainly the stakes are, they're less about the time that they have ahead, the time they have left, less about their legacy, less about what they've inherited from other generations, and not just, inheritance in terms of bequeathing, but inherit like as I get older, I think about all the things that I've inherited emotionally and through generational, like things that are passed down through the generation. I don't think that younger people think about that very often. Yeah, so that's not those aren't the stakes for them. For them, it's more about identity and defining themselves. So, and it's definitely more about how they're seen by others. Certainly the younger generation now has a lot at stake when it comes to how others perceive them, especially since everybody now just publishes things on Instagram or TikTok or anywhere online. And the way that that material is received by others is a huge part of the stakes for a younger generation that exists right now. And then the second piece is perception. So the things you have to remember when you're writing about it from the point of view of a younger generation is that the reference points are all different. That's also true about older generations, but it's a little more difficult for us to understand the references for the generation below ours. And certainly the impact that the person has on the world hasn't fully happened yet. And that can be something that's very exciting for someone in a younger generation. Certainly the understanding of opportunity, what's to come, all of the possibility, maybe even the idea that it maybe even being a little bit naive about the idea of what's to come and how that can actually really be a good thing when you're younger and you're looking ahead and you know, want to take risks. And maybe it's best not to be totally informed of everything, or else you wouldn't achieve the things that you achieve. And then, of course, in terms of perception, there are all the relevant descriptors and values that people have. If you think of a younger generation today, I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but there's a whole Gen Z vocabulary of the way that they talk about things. It's a very strange slang. I certainly don't get it. But it exists. And so those things are really relevant to those people and they probably have outsized weight. When you look at a younger generation, when you're older, it's very common to think, well, that's not that important. You can see that it's not that important, but to them, it's very important. So for our third exercise, I'd like you to think of a story that your family has told over and over again. It can be about anything, just a story that is passed down through the generations. Now pretend you're someone from a younger generation, and they're sharing their version of that story, and they're doing it on social media. Could be on Facebook. I mean, younger generations don't use Facebook, but it could be in a post, an email, but it could preferably be from social media like Instagram or TikTok, if you're comfortable. What would they say about that story? How would they tell that story? What about that story what aspects of that story would be important to them? And not only that, how would it be relevant to other people from their generation? What would they pick from that story to tell other people to show the significance and make it relevant and meaningful to other people from their generation? So remember, fictionalize, you make up whatever you want. And I found when writing about a younger generation, I fictionalized more than I ever did for writing about older generations. So it's for me, it's 7:15, so we'll do another 8 minutes or maybe a little bit less. So we have a time to wrap up. But that's the exercise. Good luck. Okay, we've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. All right, let's share. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I'd love to hear some people's take from the younger generation. Okay,
I feel bad, but no one else is raising their hand. But
that's okay, Julie. Go for it.
This one was kind of fun.
I'm glad you liked it.
My mom loves to tell the story of how when I was 6 years old, she was reading to me on her bed and my dad walked into the bedroom. He'd been cleaning the basement and she was upset that he had mingled my memory box with my brother's. She had this idea that when we grew up, she'd just hand us each of these boxes that contained all the important things from our childhood. Like, I want that clutter, but whatever. It was crystal clear to me that she was still mad at him and that he was annoyed at her for being mad, but they were trying to hide it from me. Apparently, I looked from my dad to my mom and back again, saying, "Stop fighting silently in your heads." My dad just rolled his eyes and left the room. My mom was shocked and stared at me like I had two heads. Parents fight, I get that. Mine don't do it often, so I guess that's why this story keeps getting told and retold. My mom's also a writer, so this story has been told to a lot of people. She has no idea how embarrassing it is to grow up like that. My every expression used in her articles. So fuck it. If she's going to tell the stories her way, I'm going to tell them my way. I knew you were fighting, Mom. You were never as subtle as you thought.
I like the layers there, and I like that like it's not only that like that there are layers in perception, but it's about a box of memories, which really adds to the subtext. That's great. We have about 5 minutes left. Does anybody want to share before we go to the wrap up? Okay. All right. So I wanted to just close everything by talking about the red threads. And I want, this is also something that you can do on your own after we're done, but to think about the writing that you did today and that everybody did today. And what were the themes that emerged? What were some of the things that were true about all of them? And if you think about your own writing, and I hope that you've saved what you've written, what truths remain consistent through all three generational exercises that we did? What were the things that connected all three? What were the same? And then, of course, what are the key things that we pass down from one generation to the next? When you think about today's exercises, think about those things that we pass down and how somebody else is going to take it, how you took it from somebody, and how someone else is going to take it from you, and how they're going to interpret it, how they're going to mold it into whatever they think, and pass it on again. So in our closing few minutes, does anybody want to talk about what they thought were the common themes through everything? Or anything at all. It's the last few minutes, so you can ask questions too if you'd like.
Can Matthew?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. It's really interesting because for me, those three exercises, the first one was really not related at all to the second and the third when I was writing. Yeah, it didn't connect at all. I'm trying to find a theme that would connect all three, but then if I go to the second and the third, it's quite interesting because it's about travel.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's right.
Travel as an older person. I'm thinking about my father when he first came to Canada, while as I'm thinking about, let's say, my granddaughter who's now about 16 years old, thinking, well, what's the big deal? I have GPS, I have Google Translate. I'm willing to try different foods. You
Right.
follow?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
if I use up my cash, well, my parents will help me out.
Well, you've probably, as like your generation, was the bridge between those things, right? Travel was
Exactly.
the same for so long, and then now it's just everything is unlocked. I don't know how I travel without my phone anymore, but I
Exactly.
did. I went to Paris for the first time. I remember when I was 14 or 15, and it was paper maps and everything. And so like we've seen those changes, and it's interesting that, the excitement of travel is still there. So there is a consistency, but yeah, the technology really, really does change the way that you perceive everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I think I would be able to connect everything. That was
Yeah,
a
that
great
makes sense.
exercise. I enjoyed that.
Great. I'm glad. I hope everybody enjoyed the workshop today. My last slide, and I can post this somewhere with Lucia. It was just a list of some really great intergenerational
Oh yeah.
stories that I've really loved and that I've learned from. And please
Yeah.
forgive me, I've included my own here. But it's a great list. There's some really great classics on here and some new stuff as well. So if you're looking for something, some inspiration, there's some great things here. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. I know these things aren't always easy to write on the spot and to be honest and to like drive forward. But I've really appreciated meeting you all, and you have some great stories to tell.
Thank you so much. Really
That's my pleasure.
Thank you. This was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matthew, for doing this today. It was really great. It's very inspiring. And thank you all for being here and for participating as well. I also want to thank Maria Pia Spadafora, our technical host, and I'd like to invite you all to Accenti's next workshop. Please join us on December 13th for Nona 2.0, debunking the myth of the Italian immigrant woman with Giuliana Colalillo. So again, thank you for being here at this workshop, which was made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program.